That's the Miracles Love Machine. Now, bladder cancer, how much do we know? I mean, I must admit, bladder cancer is not a cancer that I think I've heard a lot about, and it's quite concerning that research shows that although it's the fourth most common cancer in men and 11th most common in women, only 25% of us admit to knowing the possible signs of bladder cancer, and half of us don't even know what causes it, which is why I think it's great that this morning we have the opportunity to have a really open discussion about bladder cancer. And on the line with me this morning, we have Colin Bunce, Chair of ABC, Action on Bladder Cancer, and consultant urologist, and Tony Kirkbank, who's a trustee of ABC and a sufferer of bladder cancer. Good morning.
Morning, Brooke.
Good morning, Brooke.
Good morning. So, Colin, there seems to be a real lack of knowledge about this. Do you think one of your biggest obstacles is sort of raising awareness first?
Certainly is, yes. When we did a survey recently, as you pointed out, the general level of ignorance is quite alarming. Most people don't realise that blood in the urine could be an indicator for bladder cancer. It's not always an indicator for bladder cancer, but certainly people should be concerned if they ever see blood in their urine. And most people didn't realise that smoking is one of the biggest risk factors for bladder cancer, and there's often a delay of about 20 or 30 years from when you were smoking to when bladder cancer starts. So people don't pick up on that.
So what are the major symptoms people should be looking out for? You said blood in the urine. Is that the major one?
Blood in the urine is certainly the major one. And the thing about blood in the urine is that it can be just a one-off show and then not come back for weeks or months. So people sort of get reassured by the fact that they don't see it each time, and often it is painless, but sometimes people get cystitis type symptoms, and certainly in older women, those after the menopause, recurrent urinary tract infections may be an indicator of problems with the bladder, which could be bladder cancer as well, and unfortunately that group tend to present fairly late to specialists such as myself.
And what's the danger of people not recognising these symptoms as early on?
Well, like all cancers, bladder cancer is curable and certainly very treatable if picked up early. And the worries with it is the fact that it gets to a more aggressive, more invasive nature. And sadly, despite all best efforts, people do die of bladder cancer.
Now, I was going to speak with Tony. It's really good of you to talk about your experience. I know it sort of helps many listeners who would appreciate you talking about your personal experiences. Why did you make the decision to become a trustee and get involved in raising awareness?
Well, I suppose it was really because I had the time on my hands getting near retirement. I was diagnosed with bladder cancer 11 years ago, having had, as Colin says, the early symptoms that unfortunately weren't dealt with as I would have hoped now. The first show of blood came through. I went to the doctor, and the doctor told me, oh, well, it could be just polyps or something. If it gets any worse, come back and see me. And, of course, it didn't come back for another couple of months. And during that couple of months, of course, the cancer was growing, not giving me any discomfort and no signs until the next show of blood. Then, of course, when you get operated on, you go through the National Health Service business and come out at the other end, and I was lucky to come out the other end healthy, without my bladder, and willing to just help a few other people if I could, as a result of which I then got invited on to matters connected with the cancer research people.
I think it's very admirable. Why do you think that this is probably one of the least talked about cancers and why there hasn't been as much discussion? Is it because it's a personal one?
Yes, it is. It's a very personal one, especially for men. And by talking about bladder cancer today, we are raising awareness of it, that it does happen to men. It is the fourth most common cancer in men. And it's important that the people who do get these symptoms treat those symptoms correctly and go to the doctor and make sure that the correct steps are taken to see if they are carriers of cancer or not.
Did it affect your work and your family life when you were diagnosed 11 years ago? Did you have quite a strong support unit at the time?
I've got a wonderful wife, yeah. I'd been a policeman for 30 years and I'd retired from that about 10 years before I got cancer. I was running my own business as a claims consultant for insurance companies. And when I got it, it knocked me right back for several months, which set me back on my ability to carry out my job. And as well as that, I was coming up for retirement anyway, and I decided then, just to settle back and take some enjoyment out of life, because life now was a bonus to me, because cancer can be nasty, but if caught early enough, it's treatable.
That's a sort of positive note to that. Colin, I've had a listener email in and wanted to ask whether different cultural groups deal with this condition differently. Have you observed that in your work, or would you say some cultures are more aware of bladder cancer than others?
It's not so much a cultural issue. It's probably more of a social status type issue, because traditionally bladder cancer has been common amongst smokers and people working in certain industrial areas such as petrochemicals, dye, rubber making. And so it's always been tended to be the lower socioeconomic classes. So it's been more around that. From the cultural aspect, obviously you have certain groups, such as certain Asian populations, who tend to chew tobacco and may not realise that there are risks around not only smoking tobacco, but other ways of using tobacco as well.
Is it hereditary?
Not generally hereditary, although like most cancers, there tends to be hereditary tendencies, like there is in asthma and that along one side where your body's hypersensitive, on the other side where your body's can't quite correct your genetic defects that you're producing all the time. That's the sort of hereditary basis, but not particularly so with bladder cancer.
And Tony, what would you say to someone who thinks they may be a sufferer of bladder cancer? What would your advice be?
Well, the first thing, you don't know you're a sufferer of bladder cancer until something happens. And in my case, it was just that first show of blood in the urine. And even so, cancer still wasn't considered. You don't consider you've got cancer until the man says to you, you've got cancer. Especially with bladder cancer, because you don't have, or I didn't have anyway, any other symptoms. I had no discomfort, I had anything else like that. And then after the examination is made and they tell you, then you have to take it from there, really.
And where can we find out more information?
Well, the main place to look is on the website actiononbladdercancer.org. It is probably I'm certain it is the best, most informative website for bladder cancer sufferers anywhere on the web. Anybody that gets involved with a diagnosis like this is going to turn to the web first of all. And I did that myself and found a lot of American sites that just scared me. But Action on Bladder Cancer tells it truthfully like it is, in language that the ordinary person can understand. And I recommend it to anybody who wants to research bladder cancer any further.
Well, thank you very much for talking with me this morning, Colin and Tony.
Thank you, Brooke.
Thank you, Brooke.
So please do visit actiononbladdercancer.org to find out more information. We're going to the Sky News desk at the top of the hour. That's just under 5 minutes' time.